Good day, Ms. McIntosh, and anyone else who may be viewing this video. My presentation is on the Rastafarian movement for my third portfolio in comparative religion, presented by myself, Amisha Mangal. Today, I'm going to talk about how comparative religion altered my thoughts on the Rastafarian movement and three aspects of the Rastafarian movement that stood out to me and why. The Rastafarian movement is a religious and political movement that emerged in 1930s Jamaica. It boasts an approximate 1 million international followers who are commonly referred to as Rastafarians or Rastas. The Rastafarian movement is largely based on the history of African subjugation and promotes the fair treatment and betterment of Africans worldwide. The movement gained a lot of popularity following the success of Bob Marley's music back in the 1970s. Okay, so my first objective is to discuss how comparative religion altered my thoughts on the Rastafarian movement. I was mostly unaware of the Rastafari makeup. I would say that I could possibly identify a Rastafarian by their hair and maybe their dialect, but I did not know anything about their religious, spiritual, or political beliefs. However, now that I've done my research, I have gained a newfound appreciation and respect for the Rastafarian movement. So like I said, I could possibly identify an adherent by their hair. Now, I did not know why Rastas wore dreads, I just knew that it was a part of their identity. So comparative religion made me aware of the significance behind their dreadlocks. Dreads aren't unique to Rastas. This hairstyle has been around for centuries among Hindu sadhus, Egyptians, African tribes, and Kenyan warriors. However, there are a couple of reasons why dreadlocks are a central feature of a Rastafarian. Firstly, there's a verse in the Old Testament which states that no razor shall be used upon the head. A person must let their hair grow long, and this is part of the Nazareth laws. So the growing of dreadlocks is a literal interpretation of this verse. Rastas do not believe in cutting, combing, or shaving their hair, and they do not put sharp metal objects near the head. And Rastafarians are very spiritual individuals who embrace naturalness. So growing dreadlocks also represent a man's natural and ungroomed beauty. This type of naturalness is a way of connecting to nature, the universe, and God or Jah. The way dreadlocks grow and frame the face also resemble a lion's mane, and the lion is an important symbol in the Rastafarian movement. So Rastas believe that Selassie was the Messiah, and I'll get to that later in the presentation. But Selassie was referred to as conquering the Lion of Judah, so adherents adopted the lion as a symbol for their practice. The lion is humble but respected, and respect and humility are traits that are deemed important for Rastas to possess. So having dreads emulate those aspects. In early post-colonial times, long locks of hair were deemed dreadful, and that's how the term dreadlocks came about to describe the hairstyle in Jamaica. Jamaicans decided to embrace their locks as a form of rebellion against Eurocentric beauty standards and to honor their ancestors who wore locks as well. I also mentioned that I could possibly identify an adherent by their dialect. However, again, I never thought about what sort of significance lied behind the way they speak. I hear their distinct dialect in media, film, and entertainment, but I never realized how meaningful it is to them until I learned about it in comparative religion. Language and dialect is a great part of one's identity, and during slavery, Africans were stripped of their identity. So when the Rastafarian movement emerged, dialect was one of the ways employed to rebuild and reshape their African identity and nature. Rastas engage in Iric or dread talk. It combines English and African language in a way that embraces Africanness, Jah, and positivity. It is a protest against oppression and authority and is regarded a powerful tool. For example, Rastas refrain from using words that can be interpreted negatively, so they don't use the word back. Instead, they use the term forward, and forward means to progress. So Rastas would not say that they are going back to Africa. They would say that they are forwarding to Africa. Perhaps the most widely observed Rastafarian dialect is the use of the word I. It's the one that I've observed the most. The letter I is in almost every part of their language. The term Rastafari is both singular and plural. Rastas believe that Jah is present in all living things, so they refer to themselves as I and I to mean Jah and I, to show that Jah is always with them and that they are not separate from any other person. I and I is a collective we, but singular. It represents unity and sameness despite individuality and appeals to a sense of solidarity and the Rastafari citizenship. Rastas will not say, I am going there. Instead, they would say, I and I am going there. I replaces the word you in their dialect. Rastas believe that at first there was just I, and then the devil came and created you. So they don't use the word you. I is also placed in words like unity, praises, and ever. So comparative religion positively altered my thoughts on the Rastafarian movement, learning that the meaning behind their hair and dialect was heavily influenced by slavery and identity is very admirable. So my second objective is to discuss 3 aspects of the Rastafarian movement that stood out to me and why. So the 3 aspects I chose were their origins, their diet, and Rastafarian women. The history of Rastafari begins with the colonization of Ethiopia by Europeans. Africans were enslaved, segregated, and exiled as captives throughout the world, and slavery and exile condemned and suppressed African culture. In 1930s Jamaica, political leader Marcus Garvey led the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which aimed to unify those of African descent with Ethiopia. In one of Garvey's speeches, he said, "Look towards Africa for the crowning of a Black king. He shall be the Redeemer." And so said, so done. On November 2nd, 1930, Rastafari Makonnen was crowned Emperor Selassie of Ethiopia. And many Jamaicans viewed this coronation as Garvey's prophecy fulfilled and regarded Selassie as the Messiah. He was a figure of salvation, the one to free Africans from oppression and reunite them with Ethiopia. And a man by the name of Leonard P. Howell was a Selassie believer. He preached that Selassie would help Africans to gain the superiority they rightfully deserved. And in 1935, Howell established the first branch of the Rastafarian movement. This bit of history caught my attention because of its heavy connection to African subjugation. I did not know that the Rastafarian movement was influenced by slavery and the colonization of Ethiopia. So it was interesting to understand that the movement is so rooted in spreading peace and unity, and Rastas are so against oppression because they understand the horrors that their ancestors faced. And I can even link this back to the dreadlocks and the dialect. It's all part of keeping the African identity alive, standing up against suppression, fighting for your rights and embracing your culture. It's such a positive movement born out of oppression. The second thing that stood out to me was the Rastafari diet. Rastas actually have somewhat of a strict diet, which I never knew, and this is connected to the Nazareth laws as well. Rastas eat a very natural and healthy diet, free from additives and chemicals. This is done to keep a healthy and spiritually connected to the earth. It is known as ital cooking, and ital means vital. So again, here you see the importance of dialect. Rastas abstain from eating most meats. They believe that meat, especially pork, is impure. To them, consuming dead animals means that they are housing these animals in their body, much like a cemetery. And since they are very spiritual and nature-oriented individuals, they don't eat meat because it negatively affects their body and does not increase their connection with nature. They even believe that if eaten, the animal's energy and tension at the time of slaughter is transferred into the human and affects their state of mind. However, they do consume dairy products and fish, but not shellfish for biblical reasons. Rastas also stay away from salt and processed foods and rely heavily on natural produce like fruits and vegetables. Still, some of them will not eat fruits that have been altered from its original state. So, for example, fruits that were smashed or cut. Natural herbs are used in place of salt and processed additives, and a lot of Rastas use clay pots to cook because cooking in metal pans can damage the kidneys and liver. So the Rastafari diet stood out to me because it is such a healthy way of life. It was surprising to see how their foods directly relate to their value of maintaining a spiritual connection with Jah and the earth. It is part of how they connect. Eating natural brings them closer to Jah. I would have never guessed that they were so health conscious or that health was an important factor in their movement. So I really respect that. It was nice to learn. The last thing that caught my attention was Rastafari women. The roles of women in the Rastafarian movement caught me off guard. Women are referred to as queens, but they play a very secondary role. Their main duty is to stand by their king and support him. They are entirely subordinate to men. Their responsibilities go as far as pleasing their husbands, bearing and raising children, and housekeeping. And because Rastas are big on being natural, women cannot use makeup or apply chemicals to their hair. Although men can take advantage of this natural state and be naked, women must dress modestly. They cannot dress promiscuously or show off their bodies. They also cannot be unfaithful to their husbands, although the husbands do not have to abide by that rule. Perhaps most surprising is that they cannot use birth control or get an abortion. Birth control is seen as a European tactic to suppress the development of the African population, and abortion is regarded as murder. And I found this so shocking because it's so contrary to Rasta's other beliefs about people being equal. Their whole movement is based on ending oppression. And this contrast is exactly why Rastafari women stood out to me. The movement appears quite patriarchal, although I think that in modern times, their roles have watered down a little bit and women have become more independent and valued within the movement. There is still a long way to go to where women would be viewed as equal, self-sufficient, and capable of sharing the same position as a man in Rastafari. In essence, Rastafari origins caught my attention because of its ties to slavery and the African identity, culture, and essence. Rastafari diet stood out to me because of their health-conscious attitude that helps them sustain a connection with Jah and nature. And Rastafari women particularly intrigued me because of their unique situation. In a movement that advocates equality, women are visibly unequal. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that it was informative. These are my references for your viewing pleasure where you can get more information. Thank you.